From Shakespearean tales of royal shenanigans to Stephen King's modern-day masterpieces, the fertile minds of great writers have provided endless works of delicious fiction. But even the bard on his best day would struggle to compete with the bottomless pit of bizarre real-life stories. As part of an ongoing series, TopTenz presents our latest list of mind-boggling events that can only be filed under Stranger Than Fiction. Number 8. Standing tall. The 1951 St. Louis Browns were a lousy team, and that's being kind. They would lose 102 games, finishing dead last in the American League and a whopping 46 games behind the eventual World Series champions, the New York Yankees. The hapless Browns, however, did have a bona fide winner with their colourful owner Bill Veeck, who once used a 3'7", 65-pound little person to bat in a Major League Baseball game. Among his many outstanding innovations and wacky promotions, Veeck had been an early proponent of integrating the professional game. As the owner of the Cleveland Indians, he signed the first black player in the American League, Larry Doby. He also made Negro Leagues legend Satchel Paige the oldest rookie ever, as the two future Hall of Famers helped the Tribe win the 1948 World Series. But a messy divorce would later force Veeck to sell the team, only to purchase the lowly Browns a few years later. The baseball maverick tried his best to field a competitive team in St. Louis, but the crosstown Cardinals were vastly superior in both talent and selling tickets. That's when Veeck reached deep into his bag of tricks. On August the 19th, 1951, at Sportsman's Park, he ordered Browns manager Zach Taylor to send a circus performer named Eddie Gadel up to the plate to pinch hit against the Detroit Tigers. Sporting a child's uniform with the number 1/8, Gadel stepped into the batter's box in the bottom of the first inning. Detroit pitcher Bob Kane did his best to locate the tiny strike zone, but proceeded to walk the pint-sized player on 4 consecutive pitches. Before being replaced by a pitch runner, the triumphant Geidel received a well-deserved standing ovation from the sparse crowd. The following day, a furious American League president, Will Harridge, voided number 1/8's contract and charged Veeck with making a mockery of the sport. Subsequently, all future deals had to be pre-approved by the Commissioner of Baseball. For those keeping score, Gadel would later appear in another big league game, this time dressed up as a space alien, when Veeck owns the Chicago White Sox. But that, dear viewer, is a story for another day. Number 7. Family Feud. Although an obscure Bosnian Serb would forever take the rap for starting World War I, one of the most famous monarchs in history lies at the epicenter of the war to end all wars. Britain's Queen Victoria, who ruled for 63 years, is rightfully hailed as the grandmother of Europe. As a result, several of her direct descendants would eventually become belligerents in the largest and bloodiest family feud in history. Princess Alexandrina Victoria of Kent ascended to the throne at the tender age of 18 following the death of her childless uncle, King William IV, in 1837. Time restrictions prevent further explanation of the wonderfully complicated process of British royal succession, but suffice to say she got lucky and lots of peeps died for her to become the queen. Shortly after donning the crown, she kept with the family tradition and married her cousin, Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. The incestuous union produced no less than 9 children, all of whom subsequently married into the royal and noble families of Europe. Flash forward to July 28, 1914, when a 19-year-old Yugoslav nationalist named Gavrilo Princip assassinated Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria in Sarajevo. Although Queen Victoria had been dead for over 13 years, her grandchildren now ruled a substantial chunk of the planet. Sadly, they soon began to destroy it. Germany's Kaiser Wilhelm II kicked things off by declaring war on his cousin Tsar Nicholas II of Russia. A few days later, Britain's George V joined in the carnage. Number 6. Beached Boy. Quentin Tarantino's latest film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, mixes fact with fiction in his twisted love letter to Tinseltown. Oddly, the nostalgic romp asks the audience to frequently suspend all disbelief, including a scene in which a washed-up stuntman beats up martial arts legend Bruce Lee. Fortunately, Tarantino doesn't miss the mark with regards to Charles Manson rubbing shoulders with celebrities during the turbulent late 1960s. It's not surprising that Beach Boys drummer and Hellraiser Dennis Wilson would pick up a pair of young female hitchhikers and take them to his Sunset Boulevard abode. But when the girls turned out to be Manson followers, Ella Jo Bailey and Patricia Krenwinkel, the good vibrations ran out when their cult leader arrived at the party. Manson, along with 17 others from his congregation, soon moved into the party pad, setting the scene for Caligula-esque debauchery featuring non-stop orgies and drug-induced revelry. Wilson later provided his new pal with coveted music industry connections, such as the Birds producer Terry Melcher. In an interview with Richard Mirror in 1968, Wilson candidly expressed, "I told them, the girls, about our involvement with the Maharishi, and they told me they too had a guru, a guy named Charlie who'd recently come from jail after 12 years. He drifted into crime, but when I met him, I found he had great musical ideas. We're writing together now." Wilson even enlisted the help of his older brothers Brian and Carl to finance and produce a recording session with the charismatic singer-songwriter. One of those songs, the eerily named Cease to Exist, was later retitled Never Learn Not to Love and released on the Beach Boys' 2020 album in February 1969, less than 6 months before the grisly Tate LaBianca murders. Ultimately, success as a musician eluded Manson. He experienced a heated fallout with Wilson, who claims that the ex-con owed him over $100,000 and the expense of multiple doctor visits to treat his raging gonorrhea. For his troubles, the drummer took sole credit as the song's composer, leaving the false prophet to seek fame elsewhere. Number 5. Howard's huge obsession. More than 40 years after his death, fascination with Howard Hughes remains as strong as ever. His exploits as a record-setting aviator, businessman, and Hollywood Lothario provide endless intrigue regarding one of the most enigmatic and wealthiest men of the 20th century. However, among all his extraordinary achievements, Hughes's attempts at designing women's undergarments would prove to be an abject failure. His obsession with female anatomy reached dizzying heights during the making of the movie The Outlaw. Ostensibly, the film should have been a retelling of Wild Wild West icons Billy the Kid and Doc Holliday. But Hughes had a different vision in mind. The producer/director/studio boss made it all about boobs, specifically the ones belonging to actress Jane Russell. Hughes had discovered Russell in 1940 as an unknown 19-year-old buxom brunette and immediately signed her to an exclusive 7-year contract. The mogul then cast his latest ingenue in the role of Rio, a sexy senorita caught in a love triangle between the two gunslingers. The infatuated filmmaker instructed the cinematographer, Greg Toland, Citizen Kane, to feature Russell's cleavage throughout the movie and even constructed a crude garment with wires to further showcase her voluptuous figure. Naturally, the well-endowed Russell refused to wear the contraption. In her autobiography, the actress described the ham-handed design as ridiculous and uncomfortable and never wore it. Instead, she fooled her bosom-obsessed boss by simply padding her bra with tissue paper. "He could design planes," she said, "but a Mr. Playtex he wasn't." Number 4. Operation Mincemeat. "All warfare is based on deception," is a quote from Sun Tzu. Before achieving worldwide acclaim as the author of the James Bond spy novels, Ian Fleming put his creative skills to work for British intelligence during World War II. He's credited with hatching an elaborate ruse involving a corpse dressed to resemble an officer en route to delivering secret documents. The Phantom Messenger would later be dropped near the coastline and eventually find its way into enemy hands. With a wink and nod to their dark sense of humor, British military officials codenamed the plan Operation Mincemeat. The subterfuge, designed to mislead the Germans with regards to the Allies' intended attack on Sicily, revolved around a recently deceased Welsh vagrant named Glendear Michael. He would soon take on a new identity as Captain, acting Major William Bill Martin of the Royal Marines. Despite the dead man's unremarkable life and grim demise, he would soon embark on an extraordinary adventure. On the morning of April 30th, 1943, off the southwest coast of Spain, a local sardine fisherman made the gruesome discovery of the lifeless body floating in the water. The mysterious soldier, with a black briefcase chained to his waist, was quickly brought ashore and handed over to German spies stationed in the area. Later, the bogus documents found in the attaché case revealed top-secret plans involving a large-scale Allied invasion of Greece and Sardinia. The information eventually landed on the desk of Adolf Hitler, who reacted decisively while being thoroughly hoodwinked. The morbid scheme became one of the most bizarre chapters of World War II, punctuated by a cheeky message to British Prime Minister Winston Churchill declaring mincemeat swallowed, rod, line, and sinker. Number 3. Feline Forces. Albert Schweitzer once said, "There are two means of refuge from the miseries of life: music and cats." The astute observation by the renowned philosopher and Nobel Peace Prize winner might also include mention of how cats provided refuge from the misery of trench warfare during World War I. Volumes have been written about the horrors and senseless carnage of the First World War. Weapons such as machine guns, mustard gas, and flamethrowers all contributed to the endless graveyard of no man's land. But without question, the conflict would be defined by life in the trenches, which the Allies overcame with a secret weapon: cats. From 1914 to 1918, an estimated 500,000 four-legged commandos were deployed in the trenches, where they hunted and killed disease-carrying rats and mice. Their duties also extended to ships at sea, as well as serving as mascots. The practice dates back thousands of years to the ancient Egyptians, who worshipped the furry felines for their ability to keep naval vessels and royal palaces vermin-free. So the next time your cat meows for attention or requires a fresh bowl of chow, be sure to not only accommodate their needs, but also thank them for their ancestors' military service. Number 2. No rest for the wicked. The murder of famed silent film director William Desmond Taylor had all the markings for a box office blockbuster: glamour, mystery, greed, and even a few uninvited ghosts. On the morning of February 2nd, 1922, Taylor was found dead in his bungalow in Los Angeles. He had been shot in the back, most likely during the previous night, resulting in a massive police investigation of yet another roaring 20s sensational crime that would dominate headlines for months. Several high-profile Hollywood players were questioned, including the director's cocaine-addicted erstwhile girlfriend, Mabel Normand. The popular leading actress, one of Taylor's many lovers, had been the last person to see him alive on the evening of his death. After extensive interrogation, LAPD ruled her out as a suspect, despite persistent accusations from muckraking tabloids of the day. Ultimately, authorities were unable to establish any credible leads or produce the murder weapon. Taylor's family had his remains interred at Hollywood Forever Cemetery, where the story takes an even more shocking and absurd turn. A determined reporter named Floribel Moore orchestrated the kind of crazy publicity stunt that could only have occurred in La La Land. Moore, the Hollywood correspondent of the New York Daily News, attempted to outscoop her rivals with a half-baked plan involving Taylor's butler, Henry Peavy. 3 days before Taylor's murder, Peavy had been arrested for social vagrancy, and Moore hoped that she could extract a murder confession out of him. She eventually hired a Chicago hoodlum named Al Weinshank to dress up as a ghost and hide near Taylor's mausoleum at the cemetery. Late one night, after luring Peavy to the gravesite, the ghoulish gangster suddenly appeared in a white sheet and cried out, "I am the ghost of William Desmond Taylor. You murdered me. Confess, Peavy." Not surprisingly, the butler only coughed a hearty laugh before giving the conspirators a piece of his mind. As for the ghost, Weinshank later joined the real dead after being gunned down in the 1929 St. Valentine's Day massacre. Number 1. Docked and loaded. The drug culture of the 1960s and 1970s affected all corners of society and eventually spilled over into the world of sports. In Major League Baseball, pill popping before games became as routine as playing the Star-Spangled Banner. Former Pittsburgh Pirates ace Doc Ellis claims he never played a game sober and once even pitched a no-hitter while under the influence of LSD. Ellis made his MLB debut in 1968 as a hard-throwing right-hander. He quickly emerged as one of the most dominant pitchers in the game, leading the Pirates to 5 divisional titles and a World Series championship in 1971. He became an outspoken advocate for racial equality at a time when athletes were discouraged from voicing their opinions. The all-star pitcher also became addicted to drugs and alcohol to help cope with the pressures of performing at the highest level. Along with coolers full of cold beer, amphetamines such as benzodrine and Dexamyl, known as greenies at the time, were an everyday staple in locker rooms throughout the league. On one memorable occasion, Ellis decided to drop acid on what he thought was an off day while visiting friends in Southern California. However, while higher than a Georgia pine, he learned the Pirates had scheduled him to start the first game of a twilight doubleheader against San Diego later that evening. After rushing down to the stadium, he swallowed some more greenies to help balance his drug-fueled trip. Ellis then walked out onto the mound on June 12, 1970 and made baseball history. As the drugs took effect, he began hallucinating and struggled to focus. Pirate catcher Jerry May had to wear reflective tape on his fingers so Ellis could see his signals. In the end, it wasn't pretty. He walked 8 and hit a few batters, but Ellis shut down the Padres 2-0. He would go on to play a total of 12 big league seasons in an injury-plagued career filled with many ups and downs. Ironically, he came to regret the rare milestone because it overshadowed his far more meaningful accomplishments outside the sport. After retiring in 1980, he entered a substance abuse rehab program and devoted his life to sobriety, as well as helping other athletes fight addiction. He also became a spokesman for creating awareness about sickle cell disease, a condition that he battled most of his life, and worked to raise money for medical research. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below. Don't forget to subscribe. For more from me, why not check out another channel I do called Biographics, notable people from history that we cover on that channel. I'm going to link to it below. And thank you for watching.